Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leisha Jackson from FM Systems, and I want to thank you for attending today's webinar, Learn How to Manage Change in Your Dynamic Educational Facilities, Part 2. Before we begin, I want to cover a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your console, there are multiple widgets you can use. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your question. We will answer these at the end, but if we don't get to all of the questions, we will follow up with you after the webinar. You can expand your slide area by clicking on the Maximize icon on the top right-hand corner or by dragging the bottom right-hand corner of that slide area. An on-demand version will be available about 1 hour after the webinar ends. It can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier. Today on the line, we have Wiley Coleman, our Director of Sales for Higher Education and Healthcare, and Hannah Graziano, our Applications Engineer. With that being said, Wiley, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Leisha, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Again, this is part 2 of learning how to manage dynamic change in your educational facilities. So part 1, we spent a good bit of time going into our higher education survey module, which is primarily geared towards your F&A proposals and indirect cost recovery, but of course we can use that for state reporting and other reporting needs you may have. And today we wanted to spend time just going through our software as a whole. FM Systems is very dedicated to the higher education space. We've continued over the years to make enhancements to the software to be higher education specific. I think there is a thought out there that there is no higher education solution for facilities management. Obviously that's a thought that we would disagree with, and that's what we're here to show today. So it's going to be a high-level overview. We're going to be touching on each of our modules very briefly. We could easily sit here for 8 hours and demo all this software, but we'll go into just a little bit of detail today. If any of you want to spend time doing a deeper dive, we can certainly set that up later. As Leisha said, please hold all questions till the end. There is a little chat window there where you can ask your questions, and we'll get to them at the end. If we don't get to them, we'll follow up and answer those one-on-one with you. So again, we've been working in higher education for well over 20 years at this point. The company's been around for well over 30 years. For any of you that we've never spoken with before, we're located in Raleigh, North Carolina. We have our whole team here. Leadership team, sales, account management, support, development, consulting, everything's right here. It's a one-stop shop basically. With that, we'll go ahead and get things started. Hannah and I are going to kind of bounce off each other here, going through the software. So with that, Hannah, I will hand things over to you.
Great. Thank you, Wiley. So at this point, everybody should be seeing the FM Interact homepage. And before we dive into some of the core functionality, I want to touch on some of our enhanced user functionality for navigating the system. Users have the ability to choose where they have their side nav menu over here. So what you're seeing along the left side of the screen are all of our modules and the icons that represent them. But additional flexibility that we now provide is the ability for users to move their menu to maybe the top portion of the screen, and maybe they want to view this menu with text. We also have some advanced features for visibility. So for users that have visibility issues or need a little high contrast, we can build that in here. It's as simple as clicking Save, and you'll notice how that menu adjusts, and I now have text to represent the different modules within the system.
Another thing to touch on there, not only do you have the flexibility of changing the navigation, but what we're showing you today is sort of an out-of-the-box version of the software. There's always a good deal of configuration that goes into this, where we are manipulating the software at the database level to really be specific to your university and your processes and workflows. So really at a minimum here, you'd be seeing your university colors, your logos, any other things you may want to see here. Maybe it's certain images of the university or campus maps. All of those are pretty common things that we see with university clients.
Additionally, users have the ability to mark screens that they view often as favorites. which is extremely powerful. This allows users to take less clicks to get to the data and screens that they view on a regular basis. And here I'm looking at my favorites for all of the various modules within the system, but I can also break that down module by module and see my favorite screens individually. With that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into our dynamic campus map. This map can easily be expanded or zoomed in to a campus-wide view. So for universities that have multiple campuses throughout the state or throughout the country, this map could be expanded and show all of that data. Here, if we hover over any of the building pins, we see additional data. The data that's represented here is configurable by the end user as well. So where we're showing usable area, maybe it'd be more important for your organization to show gross area or rentable area. That configuration can be made easily.
And just to add a little more to that, there's a big difference with how we configure software and how other companies in this industry do it. You don't have to be an IT wizard. You don't need to write code. You don't need to do any of that. It's just simple changes at the database level that really empower you to continue to make the software your own and continue to change the software as you grow and as you change processes. I think it's fair to assume that the way you do things today will probably be a little different in 2 years, and you want software that's flexible enough to grow with you. And you don't want to have to pay expensive database administrator resources every time you want to make a change. So just know that when we talk about these configurations today, we're putting that power back in your hands.
At this point, I have the ability to drill into specific building data, just to get a closer look at that location, pulling in various details about the building here on the right-hand side of the screen, and then on the lower half, seeing a list of the floors that I have associated with this building. I can then drill into even a more granular view and see a specific floor plan within that building. I can select any space and see data regarding that space reflected on the lower half of the screen, whether it's details about the space itself, if there's an occupant within the room, photos of the room, or the different pieces of equipment and assets that are associated within that space. Additionally, we can change the way that we view the floor plan. Maybe we're interested in looking at where our departments are allocated on this floor. I can quickly select that option, and then you'll notice a legend populate here on the right-hand side of the floor plan, letting me know what those different color codes stand for. Specific to higher ed institutions, we can look at the functional use codes that are on this floor, or maybe what types of labs are on this floor. And additionally, you're not limited to this list here that we have in the dropdown. Users are able to quickly ask questions of their floor plan and find answers using our graphic theming capabilities. So here I'll come in and open the graphic theming toolbar, and I can turn on and off the various layers within my CAD drawing.
Exactly right. This really gives you the ability to, I think the best way to describe it is asking questions of your floor plan. So if you want to look at, maybe you click on the functional use graphic view, and then you can open graphic theming, and maybe there are only certain functional use codes you want to take a look at, or space use codes if you want to see certain spaces on a floor plan and how they relate to each other. It's very easy to do that. Also for, if you think about this from a facilities management standpoint, the ability for your technicians to go in and look at things like open work orders and also look at their mechanical plans. Or maybe they're on a certain floor working on a work order and they want to check other open work orders in that area to see if there's more work they can do while they're there, if they can be more efficient, especially if it's the appropriate trade or something like that. So again, this is all the different layers from your AutoCAD drawings and any other spatial data that you have in the system. So that's that's one thing we sort of glossed over. For any of you that have not seen this software before, really the foundation of this is your AutoCAD or Revit drawings. That's where we're pulling in the vast majority of this data, and then there's, of course, endless data that we can attach onto that, whether it be from legacy CMMS software, asset management software, HR software. That's obviously one of the most common ones, is associating people to spaces. So integrating with something like Banner or PeopleSoft or Workday, again, very common things. And so as you're seeing Hannah click around here and showing you different things visually on the floor plan, that's what we're, the whole point of this is that foundation of being able to visually take a look at your space, see how it's allocated, and really what we want you to be able to do with this data is ultimately make better decisions. Once you have that baseline and you see how is the space on my campus being used, who owns what space, can we reallocate this space more appropriately, or do we want to look at that 5-year, 10-year strategic plan, and maybe we want to hold off on some of this new construction because we have more space available than we thought. So again, at the end of the day, it's about the data that comes out of the system and allowing you to make better decisions with that data.
With that, we'll go ahead and jump into one of our data views here. And I like to think of these data views as enhanced Excel sheets. So here we're looking at the buildings that are within our portfolio or on our different campuses. I'm able to click into any building and see additional detail reflected on the lower half of the screen. Furthermore, you'll notice that there's some color coding here. Here we're color coding by the gross area of the buildings. However, you have the flexibility to color code on any of the data points you desire to. We can also filter down the list that we're looking at. Maybe I'm only concerned with buildings on a specific campus that I have. And come in here and filter down that list and notice that it shrinks in size, and I'm only seeing buildings now on our library annex campus. These query views that you create can then be saved for later use. They can also be saved for other users to use as well.
This is a great way to look at your campus as a whole, starting at that campus level and drilling down into certain parts of campus or certain buildings, whether it be by location or by certain attributes for that building or for that space. So it's a great way to take a tremendous amount of data and start to carve it down to achieve whatever result you're trying to get.
Additionally, we could export this view as well. We could export it to Excel, PDF, or a Word document, allowing you more flexibility to use the data that's contained within the system. Maybe you need to share it over email or bring it with you to a meeting. From here, we can go ahead and take a look at a space request form that we've configured, specifically for university settings.
Exactly. So, that's one of the most common things we hear from universities is, can we have a space request form? Absolutely. This is an example of one that we mocked up in the software. Of course, with the flexibility and configurability of the software, this would be really specific to how you choose to do this. For this particular example, it's really more than, if I were Professor Coleman and I wanted to request an additional office, we could work up a simple space request form for that. This is more, we're looking at a large type of space. Maybe we need 5 wet labs for this, particular research project that we're doing over the next 2 years, and we want to look at, what type of space do I want? Who's supposed to approve it? What are the costs for it? How am I envisioning this being funded? Again, all those typical questions that you want to see, and then from there we could potentially do certain approval workflows, or again, it all sort of goes back to how you do things. But that was something we built in here fairly recently, as we know it's just something that is a constant in the university world.
In addition to that, there is a key request form as well.
Exactly. So again, something that we see quite often from universities is that you want a way for people to be able to request keys. You want a way to track keys and see who has access to them and what doors do those keys unlock. All those standard things that you want to take a look at. For us, that's something we manage in our asset management module. So that asset management module is extremely robust. We can do things like this key tracking, of course, just standard asset tracking, IT equipment, lab equipment, even down to office equipment. There's a lot of options there, but that key request form was one that was coming up quite often. That's why we decided to make it a standard in the software rather than configuring it each time for those clients.
With that, I think it's a good segue to jump into our facility maintenance module. One thing we haven't looked at yet are reports or dashboards. So here's an example of what a facility maintenance dashboard could look like. These dashboards are role-based, and I guess I should back up a second. When I say role-based, the system itself has different levels of access, and depending on the access that you're granted, you'll have different screens and floor plans or reports exposed to you. So these dashboards here are role-based. Different users will see different reports based on their role within the system or the building that they're associated with maybe. Additionally, the dashboards are dynamic. So as any data point changes within the system, it would be reflected here. And we can drill in to see more detail. For instance, maybe I'm concerned with the amount of open work orders that this technician has. I can quickly click in and see what types of work requests are in his queue, what the status is, what he's completed, just various details, getting a more granular look.
Exactly, and these dashboards can be for any of the modules that we're talking about today. The idea with these dashboards is, of course, that there are key pieces of data that you want to look at when you log in, just depending on what your job title is and what your responsibilities are. So, if you're not a system administrator and you're really just coming into the software to look at 4 or 5 reports, we can work those into a dashboard so that someone can literally log into the system and in a couple of minutes they can look at and diagnose all the data they want to see, and they can log back out and get back to their normal day-to-day job.
From there, we can look at what an example of a facility work order request may look like. Pulling in some of the personnel and space data automatically as the user's already authenticated in the system. So just kind of taking out some of that manual process of filling out data for your end users. We can have different categories for the work orders. And as I select a category, the activities down below would only represent what's within that category. The ability to upload different documents or images is standard throughout the product itself. Additionally, as service requests are submitted, we have a powerful notification engine that's going on in the back end. So we can notify maybe the facility manager that there's a new work order in the queue, or maybe if it's a specific plumbing issue, we can notify a technician that is in charge of plumbing that there is a new plumbing issue that they need to look at.
Exactly right, and Hannah just brought up trades and specialties, and obviously there are different labor rates associated with those. So those are other things we can track too, seeing that your plumber and your electrician are getting paid a different rate, and you want to track how many hours they're working and what's the rate at which they're being paid, because you want to take a look at not only what's the cost of the materials for those work orders, but what is the cost of our workforce, and how much are we paying them to do these work orders. So you're really tracking the total cost of maintaining your facilities.
Here I've just quickly navigated to what a supervisor view may look like for facility managers, pulling in all the details that are tracked within a work order, allowing them to see the documents and images that may have been uploaded, and then additionally add equipment or parts to the work order.
right, and that's a nice segue into talking about our mobile module also, which is very commonly paired with our facility maintenance module and space management as well, but giving your technicians or other folks out in the field the ability to pull up this information on a mobile device. And you saw a picture there. That picture could have been taken with an iPhone or an iPad or an Android device or whatever mobile device they're using. That could be the technician out in the field noting that there is water damage, wanting to document it before they begin working on those. And really, any functionality that you have in the version of the software that we're looking at today, you have in the mobile version as well.
Exactly right. The second portion of our facility maintenance module is the preventative maintenance tasks, which are also a very important portion of tracking labor costs and ongoing maintenance. Here we just have a high-level list of all of our preventative maintenance tasks, color-coding by the date that they're approaching. If I click in, I can see additional detail similar to the supervisor view, just giving facility managers or technicians a close look at the work that needs to be completed, whether it's a description, the typical time required, the typical costs associated, any of those critical details that need to be tracked for maintenance tasks.
Exactly right, and we could, again, spend a couple of hours on facility management, or facility maintenance management, talking about reactive and preventative maintenance. So just for the sake of time to make sure we get through most of the modules we want to cover today, we're going to move on to the real estate module. Again, just touching on very high-level overviews of each of these.
So opening up our lease agreements view, here we're looking specifically at leases for buildings, and then we'll take a look at what the different land tracking capabilities are. At a very high level, clicking into a lease, you can see here on the lower half of the screen that we can look at the overall details, whether it's the critical dates, description, the amount of area leased, and then we also have tabs for the financial aspects of the lease or the terms of the lease. And just going all the way through tracking your utility costs, your renewal, break, or extension options, pulling in contacts. And these are all just examples of out-of-the-box fields that we have here, of course keeping in mind that you could add on additional tabs and track additional data as desired.
Exactly, and what we see, the most common version of this that we see is, a lot of universities are just managing all this in an Excel file, and they have PDFs of their leases or their actual printed out copies that are taking up a tremendous amount of space, but there's no integrated way of managing it. Best case scenario, they might have a point solution for managing their leases, but it's not tied back into space management and looking at, again, that total cost of managing facilities, looking at things like how much does it cost us to maintain our own spaces, what do we get back in rent payments, and do these transactions make sense for us? And of course, in the university world too, it's not uncommon to want to track land parcels, and there's certainly agreements around that. Maybe you're for a agriculture school, you're probably leasing a tremendous amount of land, or maybe you own a lot of land that's being leased back out to other organizations in whatever city you're in. So being able to track all those things in one place, along with the other critical functions of maintaining your campus, space management, facility maintenance, all these other things that we're talking about, is really powerful, and it makes everybody's job a lot easier, and it also leads to much better data because you're not trying to share data across 6 or 7 different systems. You have it all in one place.
I think we have time to take a look at one more module. Here, this is our project management module, designed for tracking various types of projects, anywhere from a special event all the way to new construction. Again, starting off at that very high level of all of the different projects we have in the system today, and then drilling into a specific project, seeing those overview details, where the project's taking place, the status, some critical dates, just a central location here for all team members that are associated with this project to come in and view the different phases that are associated, those details, pulling in those team member names so we can contact each other or find quickly who's associated with the project. And then also tying in those contracts, so continuously keeping all of our costs up to date, figuring out where we are with our budget, automating that process, taking out the manual steps to figure out what money we have and what money we've spent.
That's exactly right. And, we do have a number of other modules that we're not going to have a chance to really touch on today. Higher ed survey we covered last time, so we don't need to dive in there. Move management, the ability to give people the option of requesting to move to a new space, or more commonly used if maybe you're reconfiguring a whole floor in a building and you want to kind of figure out where you need to put everybody and create some automated workflows around moving people from one space to another. And then, of course, tracking costs with that. Strategic planning, one that pairs really nicely with move management, which is creating these what-if scenarios. So what if we have this new building coming live on campus and we want to take, the English department, which is occupying 2 buildings currently, and try to fit them into this new building? You can model those scenarios out, and once you get to a point where they work, you can make those live. Sustainability module, tracking utility cost. It's a really important one because that's another critical cost that relates back to your facilities. And of course, again, you want to look at what is the true cost of maintaining these things. Room scheduling, that's a fairly new one, and that one gives everyone the ability to request space for a given period of time. So, it might be you're a adjunct professor and you only need an office on campus 3 hours a week on Mondays and Thursdays. Giving someone the ability to go in and request that space, request the right type of space, maybe certain amenities that they want. That's a pretty common use of that module. So I think we have just a couple of minutes left for questions. There is one question here from Andrew, and that's, I'm interested in knowing what data is shared between space management and real estate. I may have misheard, but wanted to know what level of details are associated between both modules. Really, any data in either module can be shared. This is a truly integrated system, so all these modules work together and data can easily be shared between the two. Maybe you want to look at floor plans of buildings that you have leases in. You can certainly do that. Maybe you want to pull in real estate costs back into the space management module and again look at what are we seeing in rent payments for this space. Maybe you want to look at what's the cost of maintaining that space as it relates to the rent payments that you get for that, to see what profit margins you're working with there. So, and the same goes for any other module. They all really work together in an integrated way.
Wiley's exactly right. They've been, all of the modules have been developed to truly communicate with each other and share data in the ways that he's spoken about. Additionally, with those different dashboards we can look at, we can share data there as well.
The space request form is not the same as room scheduling. That, and I'll repeat the question, that is the space request form the same as room scheduling? It's not. So room scheduling is more for, I'd say, kind of temporary uses of space. It's not quite as permanent. Space request form would really be, in our eyes, sort of taking over ownership of that space. Eric has a question. Can you have more than one parcel per building or more than one building per parcel? Yes. Anne is shaking her head yes.
Yes. Yes, I definitely believe that would be possible. And I'll double check on that, and if we're speaking incorrectly, we'll get back to you, but that should be no problem.
I did have one more question, which is, can you split space between departments on the floor plan? Absolutely. So if we were to go back to that floor plan, maybe you wanted to, biology currently owns a lab, and you wanted the chemistry department to take over 50% ownership of that space. If you wanted to do that, you would just right-click on that space and assign 50% of it to the appropriate department. That then changes the floor plan with the color coding so you can see it visually, and it also would change any of the reports that you have. So any of the data changes that you've seen us make today correspond back to any of the reports that you have built into the software. And with that, I think we're 1 minute over. So if any other questions come up, y'all are welcome to reach out to us directly. Alicia is recording this, and we'll be able to send it back out to everyone. And then my contact info and my team's contact info will be in there as well if you want to schedule a time to talk through any other questions or take a deeper dive into the software. We're happy to do that. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We appreciate your time. Thank you for the questions, and we hope this was informative. And again, please feel free to reach out if any other questions come up.
Great. Thank you, Wiley. And thank you, Hannah. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time out of your day for attending. Keep your eye open. An email will be going out in the next few hours with the recording like Wiley had mentioned. So, and again, please feel free to reach out at any time with any questions. Thank you again, and I hope everyone has a great day.